You're listening to Funny Peculiar with Jeff Downs.
Hi and welcome to the 5th episode of Funny Peculiar. This week I've got the wonderful Nim Burgin, who describes herself as outfit maker extraordinaire, and they are wonderful outfits. Do check out her Instagram account, which I'll give you the name of now, which is Nim, N-I-M _Burgin, B-U-R-G-I-N. I'm hoping to talk to more wonderful costume makers, because these are the people that clothe the performers on the podcast, so equally as important. But without further ado, let's catch up with the wonderful Nim Burgin. Hi, welcome to Funny Peculiar, and this week I'm talking to the very wonderful Nim Burgin, who describes herself on her card as outfit maker extraordinaire, bespoke one-of-a-kind clothing, fabulous garments. I can say a testament to that, and I've seen some of her wonderful costumes. So, hello Nim.
Hello Jeff.
How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So yes, now you've made, and now we have a slight connection because I've on the comedy scene, and I know Jonathan Malin. Now you've made outfits for Jonathan, haven't you?
I have. I love making outfits for Jonathan.
And he's and I know every year we see the Pride, his gay Pride outfits, which are just incredible. I think a few of us were always asking, well, who makes these wonderful costumes? And I found out it was you. So
yeah, for 2017 he paraded down in one of my glorious creations with sequins everywhere.
Now was that the gold one? There was a sort of head to toe.
No, the gold one was from the year before, and that was actually hired from the Royal Exchange costume hire where I volunteer, where I met you.
Ah, right. Yes, because I was in there trying to get because my mum was looking for an Edwardian outfit for, I think she was doing she's got some show coming up for ukulele, and you were there, and so you volunteer there. So how did that come about?
A friend of mine was going there to pick up an outfit similar to your mum's situation, I think. She just needed something for a special do, a steampunk do, I think. And she said to me, Nim, I'm going to this place. You're going to absolutely love it. Why don't you come with me? And I went with her, and it's absolutely fantastic in there. There's just rails and rails of the most glorious costumes, all from previous theatre productions. And I turned to the people there, and I was like, have you got any jobs? And like, we're all volunteers. I'm like, okay, can I volunteer? And because I can sew and I've got quite a speciality in corset making, they grabbed me and said, yes, please join us.
Fantastic. And how long have you been volunteering now there?
About 10 years or so,
wow,
I think.
That's 10. So you must have seen all sorts there. What's the most outlandish outfit for a person you thought, I never thought they'd actually hire that?
That's a tricky one. That we do get some strange ones that come in and then spot some of our more fantasy section costumes, because a lot of the stuff is historical.
Yeah.
But we do have some pretty out there costumes, like the March hare and great big jackets with huge feathered wings attached to them. But mostly I'm behind the sewing machine when I'm there. I pitch in to help dress people when we're a bit short-handed, but mostly I'm down at the bottom, hidden away, sewing.
So you're squirreled away, so the people will come in. So yeah, the Royal Exchange obviously does lots of period costumes, but they have a fantasy section as well. I wasn't aware of this. So this is so that would come from Alice in Wonderland type productions, would it? They've got all sorts of them.
Yeah, Midsummer Night's Dream, things like that.
Right. So you've got the big headdresses as well. Oh, fantastic.
Some really fantastic, crazy stuff. There was an open day that we did where all the volunteers turned up at the theatre dressed up in whatever outfit we wanted to pick off the rails. And I chose this huge hooped skirt.
Wonderful.
That made it difficult to go through doorways.
Right.
And a giant woman's head mask thing. Quite ridiculous, but good fun.
Good fun. Excellent. No, I'm sure they wouldn't bat an eyelid down the Royal Exchange anyway, so it's like... And you also you specialise. So let's go back to how you actually got into this, because we were chatting earlier, and you were at university doing production media. Is that right? And then you sort of got into.
Yeah.
And how did that all come about?
Well, I studied media production at college and university, and I had a real passion for editing, video editing. And I did reasonably well, and I went through some placements and then went through some jobs, and finally got a job as assistant editor for Shameless Series 5. But after that, I just really struggled to get further work, and to be honest, I did find my gender caused a bit of a problem. As a woman in a technical role in the media industry, it's still a bit Stone Age. And I found the whole process quite frustrating. I ended up doing some admin jobs and office jobs just to, keep paying the rent. And about a year and a half ago, my circumstances changed, which meant that my overheads went down, and I could afford to turn what had been a bit of a hobby and making a little bit of side cash for, I don't know, ever since I was about 14. My sewing, I could turn it into my full-time job, so that's what I'm doing now.
Fantastic. And that was, so you've been kind of very much self-taught with the dressmakers. And have you had any help from family, friends, or friends?
Yeah. Well, when I was very young, my dad taught me how to use a sewing machine.
Okay.
But it's my mum that taught me how to make, slightly more complicated stuff.
So both your parents come from a background of costume design or making?
My mum used to, when she was a single parent before she hooked up with my dad, she used to make wedding dresses to pay the rent. My dad, he can sew, but he'll only really make shirts for himself, for the joy of it. We're quite a crafty, makery family.
Yes, you are. It's very rare. Well, for like your dad to be able to use a sewing machine and make his own stuff, that's amazing. So obviously, that's been inspiration for you, and so
absolutely.
That's what. And you specialise. You were saying in corsetry and corsets, and how difficult, because that's quite a technical, hard garment to make, I would have thought.
It is, definitely. Yeah, it's kind of a cross between sewing and engineering. It all stemmed when I was about 25. I bought myself a cheapish corset online, and it arrived, and it was just the most appalling work I've ever seen.
Yes,
utter trash. And it arrived, and I was just like, this is ridiculous for the money I spent. Even though it was cheap for a corset, I could definitely do better than this. So I did a lot of research online. I joined like LiveJournal and stuff like that, as it was back then, and watched YouTube videos, ordered kits from online, found various sort of communities that help each other out in this sort of thing, and just did a lot of practice and became pretty good at it. And I really enjoy corsetry. I love it.
And that's quite, and that I take it's quite an oldish tradition, because you go back to sort of Victorian times, when I think that's when it's quite prominent, isn't it? Or it might have gone back. I take it, does it go back further than that?
It does, yeah. There's been versions of the corset since about medieval times, to be honest, but it's the shape and the silhouette of them that's changed over the years. And yeah, the main one that people think of is Victorian, and that's the one that we see as like a fashion corset these days, is the Victorian corset silhouette. But it did still evolve past the Victorian period into the, not so much the 20s, but the 40s and 50s. The girdles and stuff that the women were wearing then were just yet another iteration of the corset, really.
Right, so it was, so it's kind of developed over the centuries almost, and then, but today they're very much fashion accessories, aren't they? But you wouldn't get. I've worn them a couple of times, and they're quite restricting, and so I can imagine wearing that all day is hard work.
Well, yeah. Sometimes it depends on the style that you're wearing, to be honest. one of the things that I really enjoy about making and designing my own corsets is that I get to make them so that they're really very comfortable for me. And I tend to do them with quite a lot of reduction on the squishy parts of my waist.
Yeah.
And then I don't really reduce my hips or my underbust because I don't need them to be thinner. And the bigger they are, the smaller it makes my reduced waist look. But yeah, especially for men, one thing I found is that it can be quite uncomfortable and restrictive on your ribs because you're built differently.
Yeah.
Your physiology is different, and so getting specialist male corsets can make a big difference for men who like to wear corsets as well.
Yeah, it's because it is quite a bespoke industry because you do get off the peg, but invariably everybody's body's different, so
absolutely,
you need a bespoke. So do you get a lot of do you get a lot of orders then from, is it women that are into like the goth scenes or the fetish, or where do you mainly make corsets for?
Corsetry, my main customers is burlesque artists. Really.
Right, of course.
Yeah, well, I get some through the fetish scene, but mostly burlesque artists for corsets.
And that's massive now at the moment. Burlesque been very popular. So, and I was looking at your Facebook page, and you know quite a few. There's quite a few burlesque nights going on. So you are burlesque or corsetry maker to the burlesque stars. Then I take it.
I am, yes, and I did a bit of burlesque myself. Quite well, maybe about 5 years ago, maybe a bit longer. So yeah, I kind of dove into that scene in Manchester quite a lot as well. So made a lot of friends along the way, and yeah, dressed as many of them that would let me.
Fantastic. Well, and you tried a bit of burlesque yourself. Did you enjoy that?
I did. I loved it. My stage name was Lady Garden, and I was a cheesecake comedy burlesque artist.
What was that about then? Cheesecake comedy. What was?
So for one of them, I was a coal miner to the song "Working in a Coal Mine."
Oh right, okay. Brilliant.
Black smudges on my face.
Wonderful.
A sparkly, what do you call it? Sparkly mechanics jacket thing.
Wonderful. So
yeah,
there's always a different, because I've seen a few, and I think every burlesque performer has their own sort of take, don't they? Their own sort of slant. So that got you into corsetry, and then so what was when you first then became full-time, what was the first outfit? Can you remember the first outfit you made? Like, this was a paying customer. Was it special, ornate, or was it quite a standard outfit? Can you remember?
As in because I had paying customers before I went full time.
So when you went, I suppose when you went full time, when you launched yourself, can you remember the early orders that you would have had?
I think Jonathan might have been one of my first ones. Right. I made a beautiful purple organza sort of kimono type gown thing.
Wow.
Floor length, massive sleeves.
Brilliant.
And sort of sparkly gold beading all over it, which he then wore on stage to a gig that I went along to.
Right.
And he's just such a force.
Yes,
he walks through a room. And yeah, he just swished and swirled, and yeah, it was brilliant.
Wonderful, fantastic. So that's so he was, and you, as we said earlier, you still make stuff for him today when the Pride comes up, or basically anything he needs.
Yeah, you know, he's the sort of person that likes to try and strike a strong image whenever he steps on stage.
Yes,
so, we're always talking about the next project and how we're going to make it bigger and better than the last one. And yeah, I've been in touch with him just today actually about going sparkle shopping. We need to get a lot of diamantes.
Right, okay. So it sounds like he's planning something already. And what about any more sort of performers? So you obviously make sort of drag queens. Do you do a lot of outfits for that community?
I've got a drag queen at the moment that I'm kind of talking to about what they want to make. The difficulty is that they just want me to make everything, and they can't really decide what they want me to make. But that's more for a sort of a day drag more than evening performance drag. My interesting one that's coming up at the moment is a latex number.
Right.
That's going to be quite interesting. But again, it's all a bit up in the air on design points at the moment. But I just feel like there's going to be something spectacular coming out of these discussions.
No, they sound wonderful, and we were talking earlier again, and we've both been to Club Lash, and this is very popular fetish club in Manchester, and there's lots of clubs now, fetish, BDSM, that are sort of, I think, emerging. So, and latex is very popular, and I've been to a few clubs where I've seen that. How difficult is that, working with latex? Because it's expensive, I know that much, talking to people, and if you rip it or tear it, it can destroy an outfit. What's it like to actually try and make and design with?
Well, it can be a little bit intimidating sometimes because of that cost that's involved with it. The reason that latex is so expensive is because the actual materials and the glues and everything are quite expensive, and that means that it's quite hard to do as much practice runs as maybe you'd like to do. So when I'd be teaching myself certain new techniques with fabric, I'll just nip to the Tesco or whatever and buy some bed sheets and practice with cheap fabric that way.
Right.
But you can't do that with latex. It's all or nothing. It's that £15 a metre.
Whoa, that's expensive. And does it come in different thicknesses and strengths? Is that?
Yeah. So it's a really interesting material to work with because the different thicknesses behave in different ways. So the thicker it is, the less stretch it's got,
right,
but the more it will mould you to the shape it is rather than just forming around your body.
Yeah.
So I've been experimenting with latex corsetry.
Yeah.
And that's gone really lovely. I'm really pleased with the results of that. But again, it's something that I can only dip into every now and again when it sort of feels like, okay, I can devote a good amount of time and money to this experiment right now.
Yeah.
I did recently make myself a latex catsuit for a BDSM event, and that was great because not only was it the first catsuit that I'd made, it was the first catsuit I'd ever worn.
Fantastic.
I was all worried about my body and how self-conscious I would feel.
Yeah.
But I didn't account for how fabulous I would feel.
Well, of course.
I put it on and I strutted around and felt like queen of everything. It was great.
Wonderful, because I think that's it. It's especially at these events, because I think everybody else is dressed up, you can feel, and I must admit I was apprehensive to start off with, but I think once you go to these events, you're just like, well, there's someone over there dressed up as Hellboy, or there's someone dressed up with, or hardly anything on, and there's just so much variety. You suddenly, you're not conscious anymore, really, and I think you can then, feel uninhibited.
Absolutely, yes. One of the things that Lash was always really good at, or is really good at, is putting a theme for the evening. Yes. So that people who don't necessarily have a wardrobe full of latex or leatherware or whatever can still show that they've made an effort enough to get in and not be turned away because they've just turned off the street, but without having to invest loads of money and loads of time into a costume. They can just sort of tip a nod to it, which I think is a really sort of embracing way to get people in.
Yes, yeah, I think it is. They do lots of different themes, don't they? I think that's a good way that they attract. So when you're walking around in this cat suit, so did you have anybody coming up to you and going, oh, where did you get that from, and who made you that? And of course you can say, well, I made it myself. That's always something that I love, and that I don't think that's ever going to fade. That whether it's a dress or a catsuit, when somebody comes up and goes, "Oh, that's really nice. Where did you get that?" and I go, "Thank you. I made it myself." Brilliant.
And I will never not say I made it myself. I will always say, because it's such a warm, lovely feeling.
Yeah.
To say that.
No, good.
Also, when you make your own clothes, they fit.
Well. Well, I think again, I've been chatting to a lady, Mel, who works at the Pop Boutique in Oldham Road, and of course, she was saying how vintage clothes are very well made because they were handmade back in the 50s because people had to make their own clothes, and I think it's very rare today because we have such a throwaway culture with our own clothes, with the cheap stores and the chains. So do you find people want to perhaps come to you for something because they know it will last?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, there's a huge difference in quality between something that's been sort of handcrafted by somebody like myself and the sort of things that are being mass churned out in factories. It's because people come to me and I'm going through the design process with them. I go fabric shopping with them. We talk over the various aspects of the pattern and what they want out of it, and then we talk about what they're going to be doing in it. So if I know that they're going to be doing recently I did a bodysuit for an aerialist.
All right.
And because I knew that she was going to be doing a lot of splits in it, I made very certain that the crotch seams were very strong.
Right.
And it's things like that you don't get with off the peg clothing.
Yeah.
And sort of knowing that extra care is taken to make sure that this is not going to fall apart in a couple of washes, that this stitching is not been chucked through a machine at 1,000,000 miles an hour. This has been done by a person who's paying attention and putting love into what they're making. I think it makes a real difference, not only to the quality but to the feeling you get when you put it on. You put on a piece of clothing that's been made just for you, that you were involved with choosing the fabrics and choosing the design, and it feels special when you put it on.
And this is your competition in a way from the major chains. I mean, is there a lot of competition within the like yourself, bespoke sort of outfit makers, or is it kind of it's not a dying art, but it's not a lot of people do it, I should imagine?
It's not a huge industry, no, and there are a few of us in Manchester, but I feel like we all tend to have different specialisms. So there's a woman that I know that makes quite a lot of corsets and clothing for burlesque artists, but there's certain elements of clothing that she wouldn't touch with a barge pole.
Right.
And she would probably send people my way, and vice versa. And that's another thing about sort of coming up and speaking to somebody who does design stuff and does make stuff, is that if it's not something they're going to be comfortable making, they will go, that's not actually possible for me to do, and probably best go talk to this person.
Sure, right. So everybody has a specialism, so that they can.
And or a style or a feel. It becomes a bit like artistry in a way.
Yeah. And do you ever get and the other side is comic cons and superheroes, and that's massive at the moment. Do you ever, for weekend warriors, do you ever make outfits of Viking or medieval or superheroes? Have you had anything like that?
I've done some cosplay. I absolutely love cosplay. It took me a few years to admit to myself that I love cosplay, because I always thought that it was a bit too specialist for me. But then I found myself, with printouts of various computer game characters out on my making desk while I'm trying to precisely fabric paint the same pattern. And I just went, I'm cosplaying here. That's exactly what's happening.
And it is, because that's again very popular. And for people listening, cosplay, and I kind of got a handle on it. That's very much the comic Marvel culture of people loving to dress up as superheroes. Is that roughly what it's about?
It's not just superheroes so much, to be honest.
Yeah.
Cosplay is quite a broad term, and it generally means trying to recreate a character.
Okay.
And that could be anything from Marge Simpson to a very specific. I've done the Emerald Herald from Dark Souls 2.
Fantastic.
It's a very obscure computer game.
Yes.
It can be anything in that regard. It's about trying to recreate the character.
Sure.
Usually pretty faithfully.
Right, okay, sure. Of course, so costume plays. So I suppose from us at Lash, where we have, you know, various different outfits on that fet scene, through to people at Comic Con, and I have seen a Darth Vader on rollerblades when I went there, and you get all the Star Wars fans are there, and that's quite good to go to the Comic Con just to see a stormtrooper pushing a pushchair with his baby in it and carrying around a latte in a bag is quite. it sort of blows the illusion, but you get loads of that. Okay, yeah, right. So you do.
How strange Manchester gets.
Oh, do you go to? Sorry, go on, carry on.
Oh no, I was just saying I really enjoy seeing everybody in their costumes. You know, sort of like you say, Darth Vader and I don't know, Rick Sanchez getting on the bus. It
is wonderful to all the array. I did speak to someone down at the Comic Con, and he was this guy in a Transformer outfit. He made it himself. He was like 7 foot. He was huge, and he looked incredible. And you're waiting for this voice to go, "I am the Transformer," and I just shouted into. I said, "Oh, what's your name?" And I just heard, "It's Ryan." And I said, "Oh, how long have you taken to make that?" "Oh, 3 weeks. I had to take time off work." And it's just like. And he built his own fans inside the helmet to keep himself warm. So there you go. There's dedication for you. So,
but Ryan was walking around feeling like a Transformer.
He was, and there was incredible outfits. I've got to say, I've got pictures on my phone. There was a guy as a Wolverine type, amazing, and the time that must have gone into it. So as you do, so you've got a few stuff on there. So yeah, what are you currently? What's coming up next? What's the big project for you, would you say?
Let's see. On the cutting table at the moment, I've got a rather funky mother of a bride of a bride. Sorry, I was trying to work it out. Yeah, mother of a bride outfit. So she's going to lesbian daughter's wedding.
All right.
She's quite surprised because her daughter is usually quite butch. Is going to be the one wearing a gown.
All right.
And I'm working on a very snazzy one-shouldered jumpsuit in scarlet for the mother of the bride.
Right.
That's quite funky.
That's different. That's very different from the mother of the bride outfits that I've seen.
Yeah.
I've bought myself, but I've seen as well. And right, okay, that's going to be one hell of a wedding shoot when the photographer turns up. So the daughter, who's normally butch, is wearing the dress, and then her partner will be the. Is she wearing a suit or another dress?
Yeah. So the more feminine is going for the suit.
Oh, there you go. There's a change. Oh, well, that sounds fantastic. So it's like.
Yeah, I love a wedding.
You love a wedding. Oh, listen, they're the greatest outfits. You can't beat a good. You can't beat a good wedding dress.
Absolutely.
And all question I like to ask everybody is if I'm going to when I do my next podcast, who do you think I should interview? Who do you think would be good for Funny Peculiar?
I'd really like to hear you talk to Mona Von Chrome / Rusty Von Chrome.
Right. Okay.
She is a burlesque artist that also does drag king burlesque.
Wonderful.
She has recently retired, unfortunately, but she is still going to be quite a good person to talk to. I reckon she's got some stories. That's
great. That's fantastic. That sounds perfect. So for Funny Peculiar, because I've got lots of drag queens lined up, but drag kings, and that's a smaller subculture, but I'd still love to chat to someone from there. So that sounds perfect. Nim, thank you very much for being on the podcast.
You're welcome.
I hope you enjoyed it. I didn't go too Paxman. It was all right.
No drilling deep questions.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. If it's too deep, I don't even understand and I get confused. So listen, thank you very much for being on here today. Take care.
You're very welcome. Thanks, Jeff. You take care.
Thanks, Nim.
Bye.
You've been listening to Funny Peculiar. Tune in next week. More great guests.
So a big thank you to Nim again for being my guest today. If you want to catch up with Nim, you can on Facebook. Her address is at Nim Burgin Clothing. You can get her on Instagram, which is I gave at the beginning, but I'll remind you again, it's Nim_Burgin. That's Burgim. And you can also email her at nim@nimburgin.com. So any of those places you can get her. So thank you again. Thanks for listening. Oh, that's my phone going off. Just probably another guest trying to get on Funny Peculiar. And also, just to remind you, Nim has a website which is www.nimburgin.com, so you can get her there as well. Thanks for listening and keep sharing and keep it funny peculiar.